And it also extends to religious figures. If we could produce a vision of a deceased person, or why not? Why could we not produce one of, say, of Jesus, for instance?
What do you think? There was this in the late 1960s in Zaytun, Egypt. There was the apparition of Mary, of Virgin Mary, right? And she appeared differently to different people and never spoke. Do you think that could be someone that deliberately produced that apparition that could be seen by thousands of people?
I would say in theory, but in practice, probably not, because you're right, that apparition was seen by thousands of people. Fatima, while Mary herself was only seen by the three children, tens of thousands of people saw the miracle of the sun.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that you can do that, especially when you get back to the seance material. You're talking about a lot of different people, all with like-minded, holding hands, putting themselves into an altered state of consciousness around someone that theoretically is very talented or gifted at that kind of thing. And then you produce apparitions, and there have been some rare occurrences of apparitions seen by many people, as we discussed earlier. But when you're talking about thousands, and the Zaytun case and the Fatima presumably would have been done inadvertently by somebody, that would be too much. I think that's beyond the limits of what that could explain, which I think that's a good thing.
Now, there have been some cases where someone either saw the Virgin Mary or went to one of those sites where she was seen by others, and they get healed. What do you make of that? What do you think that is? Is she actually healing them? Well, yeah, tell me what you think of that.
I like to think so. I like to think that that's really God or some benevolent angel, or who knows, maybe even the Blessed Virgin herself healing these people. That's what I like to believe. Now, when you get into the healings, though, again, you've got cases where healings have been done in other contexts. Back in the late 18th, early 19th century, you got the mesmerists, the hypnotists, people that would hypnotize people, and they'd come up with cures. And they would cure things that were done basically that were not treated by, were untreatable at the time by current medical technology.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that you can do that, especially when you get back to the seance material. You're talking about a lot of different people, all with like-minded, holding hands, putting themselves into an altered state of consciousness around someone that theoretically is very talented or gifted at that kind of thing. And then you produce apparitions, and there have been some rare occurrences of apparitions seen by many people, as we discussed earlier. But when you're talking about thousands, and the Zaytun case and the Fatima presumably would have been done inadvertently by somebody, that would be too much. I think that's beyond the limits of what that could explain, which I think that's a good thing.
Now, there have been some cases where someone either saw the Virgin Mary or went to one of those sites where she was seen by others, and they get healed. What do you make of that? What do you think that is? Is she actually healing them? Well, yeah, tell me what you think of that.
I like to think so. I like to think that that's really God or some benevolent angel, or who knows, maybe even the Blessed Virgin herself healing these people. Debunkers tend to scoff at that data, but honestly, I think the data is strong enough that probably really did happen. So is it possible that, say, someone that goes into an altered state of consciousness produces an apparitional drama, and that apparition comes and heals them? Because we know that there's apparitions of Jesus, there's apparitions of Mary, other religious figures that come and heal that person seemingly miraculously. Was that somehow produced by the subliminal consciousness of that person, or maybe that person and others? Maybe you could even argue prayer produces that as well, where we've got a certain person in mind, a bunch of people, we pray, we close our minds. A lot of people go into altered states of consciousness. You could argue that maybe that's just psychokinesis at a distance, and that's why some people are healed, or why that seems, at least anecdotally, to work.
Psychokinesis, what's the difference between that and psychosomatic?
Psychosomatic would be where you're healed. Say if I have a pain in my back, you suggest that, if you keep running Like, and I'm not a runner, but it's a bad example. But if you keep running too much, you're going to get a pain in your back. And I wake up the next day. That would be more of a that would be, and then someone, like, let's say you give me a medicine, you give me a couple of Tylenol, and I feel better about an hour from now, and you say, aha, that was actually just a sugar pill. Yeah. That would be a psychosomatic cause. Although even in psychosomatic causes, you could argue it's a matter of mind over matter.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of these healings, by being there with the Virgin Mary, thinking they saw her, that could be psychosomatic, couldn't it? Some of them?
It could, although in some cases you have limbs that are fractured or that have been mangled for years that are suddenly healed. You've got metastatic cancer that's gone into remission. There are well-tested cases of that. So what do you do with that?
All right. So earlier, toward the beginning of this, when we talked about what led you into this, we talked about the Rebbe. So again, remind us, who is the Rebbe? Why is he important in the study of apparitions?
The Rebbe was a messianic figure. He basically he was a famous Jewish rabbi that I believe he was a leader for years, decades actually, and died in 1994. But very charismatic figure. He led a mystical sect, the Hasidic Jews, Chabad, Chabad, and some of them thought he's going to declare himself to be the Messiah. Well, unfortunately, he had a stroke and he was really largely disabled, but he was able to go to a lot of the services and the Jewish festivals and holy days after that. Now, in 1994, I believe that was the right year, he passed away. And some people were so faithful, they thought he was going to get up and walk even then, that he's going to be raised. He wasn't. Some other believers, it's a peripheral group within that sect, but some other Hasidic believers believe that he has been raised, and some have actually seen the Reb. They've claimed to have had visual appearances of him.
So, how are the appearances of the Rebbe different from appearances of the risen Jesus to his disciples?
Well, let's talk about the similarities first,
okay.
Because you have one rabbi that had recurrent appearances of the Reb. Now, interestingly, this rabbi that's mentioned in the literature, he's had a lot of spiritual experiences, but I think he claimed that the Reb appeared to him 6 times. It was always just to him. But you have some cases where he appeared to 2 or 3 people. At once, you have one case where he appeared to 7. Okay. I believe some of these claimed appearances, especially the solo, were probably subjective, that they were hallucinations. They weren't real, okay, because they happened in very charged religious settings. A lot of the visions people have of the Reb resemble pictures, paintings of the Reb, okay, in the, especially at the Brooklyn headquarters where the Reb held out his ministry. But then you have some of the ones that are more difficult to explain are the group appearances. So, and then you've got a few cases of what I call rescue apparitions. The Rebbe was involved with that as well. I know there was one case of a lady that was in Israel and the bus was being shot at by terrorists, Palestinians. And so she had a vision of the Rebbe and said, "You need to get down into the floor of the bus right now." She did. She was spared. The person beside her was shot and ended up dying. So that's what I'd call a rescue apparition. There was one case where there was a diver who something went wrong, was about to drown. He got saved by 2 people. And when he got up above the surface of the water and he came to, there was a person standing over him and said, "Thanks for saving my life, but where's the other person?" The other diver said, "No, I'm the only one that was here." Well, later on, this person that was saved saw the picture of a Rebbe in a photograph, and he didn't recognize me. He said, "That was the other person. That was the other person that saved me." I'm not even sure if this person was Jewish, the diver. But some of those cases can't really be explained away as hallucinations. I believe they are consistent with apparitions, though. As far as Jesus is concerned, what we have with him, and at the book, I make three different sets of assumptions in the closing chapters. I take 1 Corinthians 15 and try to say, okay, if we just take the appearance data in 1 Corinthians 15, since it's widely agreed upon by scholars to represent basically what happened, does the apparitions theory stand? And I find even if we just use that, maybe the Zaytun appearances of Mary can match that, but that's about it. If you take the empty tomb, if you add that to the data, that makes it even harder to explain the references of Jesus. So for the Rebbe, there are people that make processions or pilgrimages to his gravesite, and every year there's a celebration, I believe, the day of his death. So the vast majority, even those that claim to believe he is the Messiah, and that that he has been risen, most of them will acknowledge there would be a corpse there or bones there in the tomb if you were to dig it up. From what we can tell from early Christianity, at least based on the Gospel of Mark and beyond, ladies found the tomb empty, and we have that tradition, whereas the Rebbe does not. And then if you take, and we're getting into more dicey territory here with the post-resurrection appearances in Matthew, Luke, and John, but if we accept those as historical, those are just robustly physical. You've got, now to be sure, there are apparitions that have consumed food, so more along those lines, but Jesus appears to 12 people. You don't see that too much among spontaneous apparitions. He appeared to 500. He ate food on multiple occasions.
He cooked breakfast and
He cooked breakfast. He even performed a miracle, another miraculous catch. So the more history that we find in those narratives, the more it appears that Jesus' appearances were something different.